Chapter 236. The Dark King opened his single eye wider than ever before, revealing a deep and endless despair within. In that gaze, a fiery red anger was brimming, as if he were consumed by some form of excitement. Immediately, the lucky stork cried out in desperation, "Master, Master," as it was being drawn into the darkness, a darkness that would devour it like the others. The stork might be the last of the first generation of Misty Mountain creatures to be captured by the Dark King. It didn't want to leave its master at this critical moment. The divine tree, in its fury, quickly extended its roots to rescue the lucky stork from the dark mire. It shouted, "Stop it, Dark King!" But before the roots could even stretch a few meters, a terrifying wave of dark energy shot forth, smashing the divine tree's roots and severing its core. The Dark King had sent his dark arm to intervene. He muttered, "Don't mess around," perhaps focusing his attention, not wanting to destroy the divine tree immediately. As mentioned in the previous chapter, his ultimate goal was to bring despair to the strongest being on the planet, the divine tree. He sought revenge on this world for the incurable wounds it had inflicted upon him. For him, this battle was nothing more than a game. Does this make the Dark King sound like a mere child? The creatures of Misty Mountain, once engulfed by the darkness, felt an endless despair. There was no physical pain, but their spirits were tormented as if pierced by thousands of needles. They howled in unconsciousness. Look, the dinosaurs roared loudly, and the mammoths sang sorrowful tunes. Even the Australian Legion couldn't escape the Dark King's grasp, as they too were consumed by the darkness. He wasn't making idle threats. He intended to annihilate every living creature on this planet. The kangaroos and magical martens were truly stunned, their consciousness still intact, which was the worst part. They witnessed their master devouring them alive. What could be more despairing? Wherever the Dark King's darkness spread, it immediately ensnared and consumed the creatures. The ice dragons and fire ducks met the same fate. The speed at which the darkness spread was too fast. No creature could escape it. Even the birds flying in the sky were dragged down by the darkness. The Dark King's vulture minions screamed in panic, still not comprehending what was happening. Below, the demon buffalo, flower spirits, and honey badgers were swallowed up. Out at sea, the Arctic Queen stood on her iceberg, using her spiritual power to observe the battlefield. She was shocked to see the creatures of both sides disappearing at an alarming rate. What was happening? Looking ahead, she saw a wall of darkness rising thousands of meters high, behind which were countless cries of despair. This wall of darkness emitted an extremely unpleasant odor, the stench of death. The Dark King had gathered enough. He began drawing his prey back to him. The mystical beasts screamed in terror, their instincts knowing they were nearing the end of their lives. They wanted to escape, but how could they? The Dark King sneered maliciously, "Ha ha, every living creature will become a part of me." The divine tree watched helplessly as he devoured the other creatures, including his own comrades. How many beasts had he consumed? Hundreds, perhaps thousands. It was impossible to count. Then, his entire body began to mutate, physical form materializing and swelling with grotesque lumps of flesh. The sight was revolting. The divine tree's eyes widened in horror, trying to discern what monstrosity he was transforming into. Damn it, his shaping ability was utterly obscene. He had morphed into a creature with hundreds of legs, a body like a massive flesh ball, topped with dozens of enormous eyes. The Dark King deserved an Oscar for creating the ugliest monster in this entire story. The divine tree felt horror, not because of the ugliness, but because of the immense spiritual power he was measuring. It was overwhelming. Was this the despair the Dark King intended to inflict on the divine tree? From the many eyes, the Dark King's voice emerged, sounding like the voices of thousands of vengeful souls. "Oh my, I have finished absorbing everything. This feeling of abundant strength is truly wonderful." He then slowly approached the divine tree. The divine tree did not try to flee, knowing it was futile. Despite his heavy appearance, the Dark King could appear right before him in the blink of an eye. He raised a leg, aiming to crush the divine tree. The weight of his body alone, even without exerting much force, could kill a fourth-order transcendent being. The Dark King stomped directly on the divine tree's face, causing the ground to quake violently. He coldly looked at the divine tree and declared, "The Earth's magnetic field is gradually disappearing, and the planet has only 20 minutes of life left." At this moment, the moon had drawn closer to the Earth. Its surface facing the Earth was heating up, resembling a glowing ember. Once it collided with the Earth, it would spell the end of everything in this world. The divine tree, trapped beneath the colossal foot, began to swing its roots in defiance. It roared in sheer rage, screaming the Dark King's name in despair, relentlessly thrashing its roots against the foot. But damn it, this body wasn't made of ordinary flesh. It had the color of granite and was harder than diamond. The divine tree couldn't even scratch it. The foot morphed into a fist and delivered an uppercut, shattering the divine tree's core into fragments. The Dark King swiftly caught the largest piece between his two fingers. Luckily, the smaller something is, the more it can withstand force, so the core fragment didn't break further under the grip. The Dark King's eyes gleamed with triumph as he laughed maniacally. "Ha ha ha, look at you now, even smaller than a mole." The divine tree hadn't given up yet. It continued to sprout roots, its eyes glowing brightly, continuously whipping them at the Dark King's hand. But as before, it had no effect. The Dark King watched in amusement, savoring the scent of despair. He scoffed, "Still resisting? Do you still have hope? Every creature has its purpose, but death is the inevitable final destination." As he spoke, several volcanoes began to erupt again due to the changing magnetic field of the Earth, which could no longer contain the lava beneath. The sea levels in some places rose by tens of meters, submerging countless cities. Offshore, humanity and the Misty Mountain Alliance were still fiercely battling the sea monsters. The Dark King, having grown bored, began to form a sphere of spiritual energy. This would be the final blow to send the divine tree to the afterlife. The spinning and compressing of the spiritual particles created a piercing sound, and a faint red light grew increasingly blinding. The divine tree cursed in despair. "Damn it, you bastard, you wretch!" A sound of slicing wind echoed as the space tore apart. The deadly red beam of spiritual energy shot directly at the divine tree held in the Dark King's grasp. The beam struck, starting its destructive process. With the Dark King's current power, the divine tree was sure to turn to ash. But suddenly, time froze. The space changed color. Was this the world of no color? The divine tree, having resigned to its fate, had closed its eyes but now opened them wide to observe. What was happening? Everything was motionless. The divine tree thought time had stopped, but it wasn't just time. Both time and space had been frozen by an absolute power. Then, a system suddenly appeared before the divine tree, flickering a few times before stabilizing. The divine tree looked on calmly, knowing that this system must be behind it all. Then a female voice from the system spoke, "You, do you want to win?" The divine tree was astonished and instinctively replied, "Of course, but do we have any chance left?" Even the divine tree didn't believe in this game anymore, feeling checkmated with no escape. But the female system voice hurriedly said, "Come with me." Then, time and space began to fade, and the current scene around the divine tree started to change, like transitioning to another scene in a movie. The divine tree found itself on a high mountain peak, looking down at a lush green forest below. Filled with doubt, it exclaimed, "Where is this place?" The system promptly replied that they had traveled back 129,600 years, to the time when darkness was born. The divine tree asked if they had traveled through time, but the system clarified that this was merely a three-dimensional projection. The Dark King had once lived on a highly advanced civilization on another planet before it was annihilated. Somehow, the Dark King managed to escape to Earth, which was currently in the Cretaceous period. Before them, the first meteors began to fall to Earth, and then they appeared in outer space, witnessing the desolate Mars. The system revealed that the planet the Dark King had lived on was indeed Mars. The divine tree was astonished, finding it hard to believe. Yet, after countless years, the Dark King had awakened, began interacting with this world, and met a human girl. He saved her life and gave her something, which turned her into the first human with a system. When the girl activated her system, something significant happened. A wave of spiritual power began to activate. The divine tree, surprised, asked if the activation of the system had triggered a new evolutionary process based on spiritual power. The system confirmed this, adding that the appearance of the divine tree had once again revived this process. This meant that whenever the Dark King was defeated, all spiritual power would withdraw from this world. The divine tree's appearance carried deeper implications than initially thought, perhaps as the natural adversary of the Dark King. But could this detail help the divine tree defeat the Dark King? Stay tuned for the next part tomorrow.